Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about sketching for your coil vessel and creating the slab to be the base of your coil vessel and then actually starting to build the walls. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you my sketches. You're required to have at least 2 sketches for 2 different vessels. Some of you will complete one vessel, some of you will complete both, depending on the speed and how you build things. So my first vessel, I described what it would be used for. So it's a small water pitcher. And it's important when you're sketching something 3-dimensional that you show it from several different angles. So if you look at my sketch, I have a side view and then I have the bottom and top view. So this is if I were looking at the bottom of the vessel. This is if I were looking at the top, so it has the spout because it's a water pitcher, so it would pour liquid out of that spout. And this represents the handle on the side right here. I also describe the surface of my vessel as well. So I'm going to leave half of my coils showing. On this side, I'm going to smooth the coils so you can't see them anymore. And then I'm going to applique some coils onto the side to look like vines, and I'm going to make some slab leaf shapes and applique those on the side as well. And I'm going to pull this handle. I will show you guys how to pull a handle over a sink using water. You can also make handles out of coils or even a slab. So I'll show you the 3 different ways that you can make handles. So this is the one that I'm going to go with for today. The first thing I would want to do is actually draw out the shape for the bottom of my pot. So on my sketch, I have a small shape right there, but this is the actual size. And I want you all to actually draw the shape for the bottom of your pot on paper. And I will have scissors available, and you're going to cut this out because once you roll out your slab, we want to have a tracer so that you don't make a mistake and cut the wrong shape and have to start over again. So I'm going to cut out my tracer shape that I drew with pencil until I got the shape that I wanted. If I had to erase a few times and redraw it, that's fine. That's why we make a tracer first. And I would lay my tracer on my slab. So you want to make sure that your slab is big enough that your tracer fits on it. And then there was a variety of different tools you could use for cutting. I suggest using this is the best tool for cutting clay in my opinion. And I would just go ahead and lightly trace around that shape. I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm just giving myself a guiding line, and I'll take the tracer off when I'm actually ready to cut. You could even use a pencil to make your guiding line if you have one available and you're waiting for the palette knife. Okay, so I've got my guiding line. Now I'm ready to start cutting out that actual shape. You can rotate your slab around and then actually start to cut all the way through. And I'm not really pushing that hard. Cuts through pretty easily. Take some of this off. This clay, I just made this slab like 5 minutes ago, so I could use this to make coils. You might notice that this clay is a different color than the other clay we had. This is terracotta clay. It's pretty much the same. It's a little bit less wet. So you're going to notice that this clay is a little stiffer than the other clay we were using, which is actually really good for hand building. So you guys might have a little more success with this clay. But it's the same. It's not going to stain your clothes or anything like that. You still have to cover it to stop it from drying out, just like the gray clay. Okay, so there we go. I have my nice little base. I mean, you can flip it or leave it however you want. Maybe you don't want to have that texture on the base of your pot, so you could take one of those ribs and smooth that out, because when you look inside the pot, if you leave that texture there, it's going to be there forever if you don't smooth it out. Some of you did that with your mask, and I didn't tell you guys that you had to smooth it out because you don't. But if I were going to make a water pitcher and use it at my house, I wouldn't want to have that texture on the bottom of it. I'd want it to be smooth. So I'm going to take a minute and smooth out that texture. You can use your fingers to get those last little bits. Okay, so I would be ready to start adding my coils. So I already rolled one coil, I'm gonna roll one more just to refresh your memory, and then I'll show you how to attach them. So you wanna grab a fair amount of clay, and you want to just kind of form it into a cylinder shape. You can do it on the table or in your hands. And we really want to make this clay, the coils, about the size of your thumb. We're not going for really, really skinny coils because you are required to make this pot at least, I believe I said 6 inches tall. So we're not going to want to roll really tiny coils. We're rolling bigger coils for this assignment. Now, when I roll coils, I start from the middle and I work my way out, and it stretches that coil out. If I notice it's flat, it's kind of flat, I want to just set it on that flat side and work it back into a nice round coil shape. Some of you are going to be more naturals when it comes to rolling coils. Others might need a little more practice, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having to try a couple times before you get it. This is coming out a little flat, but I think I'll still be able to use it. Now, the good thing is I have my tracer, and I know that this is going to be big enough to fit all the way around. I can kind of, and I can cut it if it's too long. So sometimes I like to roll 3 or 4 coils and then attach 3 or 4 and then roll 3 or 4 and just have them kind of ready to go. So the first thing I need to do once I'm done rolling out the coil and I'm ready to attach it is I need to score my base. So remember, when you can use the fork or you can use the needle tool. You could even use this for scoring. As long as you're really getting a good, don't be afraid to really put a lot of those lines into that, because this is what's going to hold it together. So whatever you choose is fine. Now, I want to score my coil as well. I like to make sure I have scratches going in multiple directions too, because remember, the scoring is really just causing grooves that connects the clay to each other. So you want to have it going in several directions. And you can go ahead and take your finger or your sponge and add some water and then score it again. That creates slip. Slip is just really wet clay. It's going to help seal these together. Take my sponge. See, the slip is sticking to my fork too, so I can kind of wipe that off onto my coil. Now I'm ready to attach. So I'll go ahead and, so this is kind of uneven, so I'm just going to cut that off because it was a little bit too chunky. And I'm just going to wrap this coil around. Now, that actually fits quite perfectly. If it didn't fit perfectly, you would just cut it to the right size, but I do need to score this as well. Anytime you're attaching anything, you need to make sure you score it, otherwise it will not stay. Now, after you attach that coil, you really want to take a minute and make sure that it's wiggled into place. So I'm just making sure that it's not going to move. I'm closing off that seam right there. And I would take my wooden knife, go around the inside, smooth that out. After each coil, you really have to take a few minutes of time smoothing everything out, or otherwise you're going to end up with a very messy pot. You know, if you're trying to go for that messy look, which we'll look at some different pottery today, some different styles, that's one thing, but if you're not going for a messy look and you end up with a messy looking pot, that's not good. So I'm not going for a messy looking pot, so I really need to take some time and smooth out all of my connections before I move on to my next coil, especially on the outside. So the inside is one thing. This is a big mess right now, so I really need to go and smooth this out with my finger and my tools. I got all this mess right over here. Sorry, that wasn't on the camera. So I need to take a lot of time to smooth that out. So I'm gonna go ahead and work on smoothing that out, and I'll show that to you guys in class today. I'll show a second video later on this week that's gonna show you how to create a silhouette or a shape of your pot that curves in and out, how to do that. So we'll cover that later this week.